Hello everyone and welcome to today's British Hydrological Society meeting. Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Kirsty Murphy and I will be chairing today's meeting alongside Will Rust. So just a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get started. Please just take a moment to make sure that your microphone is muted and if you could switch off your video as well, please. This meeting is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the BHS YouTube channel afterwards. We do welcome your questions and there will be the opportunity for a question and answer session at the end of the talk. So if you would like to type your questions into the chat box or just raise your hand at the end once Rob has finished speaking. Just a brief overview of the National Committee. So the current president is Duncan Faulkner after taking over from Hayley Fowler last year. Scott McGrain is the treasurer and Victoria Coates is the secretary. Please do feel free to contact anyone from the committee if you have any queries or you wish to. There's more information on the BHS website about contact details if you require them. Just a few dates for your diary as well. So the next upcoming conference is the Peter Wolf Early Career Symposium at the University of Bristol from the 8th to the 9th of May with the theme of Digital Futures for Observational and Predictive Hydrology. The registration and abstract submission is now open. And some further dates for your diary. On the 10th to the 11th of June is the Royal Society meeting in London. And the National Symposium will be taking place at the University of Oxford from the 23rd to the 25th of September. Dates and registration information will be released around early May, so please do keep an eye on your inboxes for further details. Again, more information can be found on the BHS website. So yeah, thank you for your attention and I will now hand over to today's speaker who is Professor Rob Lamb, who will be talking about the UK flood hydrology roadmap. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, Rob, and then hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Kirsty. Okay, can you just confirm the slides showing?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you, Rob.
That's great. Thanks very much. Well, thanks for that introduction. As the slide said, my name's Rob Lamb. I'm director of the JBA Trust, which is the charitable foundation that's funded by the JBA Group of Companies and chief scientist with JBA and a professor in practice at Lancaster University. And I've been involved with the flood hydrology roadmap, really, I guess, since its inception. The roadmap was published almost exactly 2 years ago, March 2022, as a 25-year agenda and action plan for flood hydrology in the UK. So obviously I've edited that title now. It's now a 23-year plan of action. So still a long way to go, but we're well underway with this. And this talk today is the second update that I'll be delivering through the BHS. So it's an update on an update that was originally given in June last year. So some of it may be familiar from that talk last year. I hope that if there is any duplication there, it's a useful reminder and an introduction for people who perhaps are new to the roadmap. So what we're talking about, the flood hydrology roadmap itself is available on .gov.uk. It's really easy to find. So that's the primary source of information. During this talk, I'm also going to draw on some other resources and in particular to say a bit about the Environment Agency's Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme and also some analysis that was presented in a commentary paper in Hydrology Research that that was written by, well, primarily the main executive committee and advisory groups for the original development of the roadmap. Just as a reminder, the roadmap is a product of very extensive community co-creation and co-design. So it was initiated through the DEFRA Environment Agency and NRW joint R&D program in flood and coastal risk management, and that started in 2018. And the development of the roadmap was facilitated through that program, but the objective was always that this should be a community-owned exercise in co-design. And hopefully the project has been successful to date in achieving that community co-design. The roadmap, as published 2 years ago, drew on engagement of more than 270 different people from across 50 organisations. And as a reminder, there were 7 different modes of engagement over a period of about 2 years during its development, and there was a hiatus related to the COVID disruption in that period as well. So the flowchart here, I'm not going to go into the details of this or explain it box by box on this talk, but this is from our hydrology research paper, and really the point here is just to illustrate the range of different forms of engagement, the different numbers of people involved, and that this was a really serious exercise in co-creation, and involved, I suppose, several cycles of consultation, ideas generation, and refinement and review and challenge. So that's the process that led to the final artifact published in March 2022. And the graphs on the right-hand side of the slide here, also from the hydrology research paper, are really just illustrating something about the distribution of different people and the representation of different types of institutions and different sectors in that co-design process. And there's a reasonably good coverage, I think, of the professional communities that one would expect to have a stake in flood hydrology. Maybe some areas for improvement, but certainly fairly broad range of engagements. Okay. The overall vision that was generated through this process was for UK flood hydrology during the next 3 years now, to give society an improved sort of hydrological foundation for managing flood hazard, and to do that in a way that is cognizant of the way the world is changing, particularly with respect to environmental change, and also to see hydrology and flooding as a whole system, probably take a system of systems view, incorporating process understanding, high quality evidence, and where possible the quantification of uncertainty. And I suppose the roadmap was also in some senses a socio-hydrological project in that it really identified how leadership and collaboration are important in achieving the vision. So as I say, it's all there on .gov.uk, and I always encourage people to take note of the appendices as well. You can see them listed on this slide. There's a great wealth of information within those appendices. Basically all the more or less the raw consultation, survey, and stakeholder analysis data is all contained within those appendices. So what that all led to was the identification of 4 themes. Those are data, ways of working, methods, and scientific understanding. And within those 4 themes, are distributed across them, are 31 distinct actions that are elaborated within the roadmap documents. And these have often been presented in this form as sort of action wheels. There's also within the roadmap and within our commentary some analysis of the context within which the roadmap was designed. It didn't emerge in a vacuum, of course. So it was shaped by work that was already underway at the time of its inception through the BHS and the Royal Society on the Future of UK Flood Hydrology, and that was work that was initiated by Keith Bevan and led to a number of papers. The design of the roadmap also helped shape the EA's Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme, FIP, that I will come on to in a minute. And I guess it was created alongside and with multiple links with the UK Research and Innovation Flood and Droughts Research Infrastructure Initiative, which we'll also say more about in a minute. From a scientific perspective, we did some analysis, and this is in a supplementary information in the hydrology research paper, about the mapping between the UK Flood Hydrology Roadmap and the IASH, International Association of Hydrological Sciences initiative on 23 unsolved problems in hydrology, which we took as being essentially the nearest thing there is probably, well, it is really a global scientific consensus statement on research challenges in hydrology. The rather complicated looking circular diagram on the right there shows the results of some data analysis and natural language processing analysis that looked for keyword connections between the IASH unsolved problems work and the published roadmap. And I mean, the main point here is just to know that there are lots of links, as one would hope. There were also some gaps identified through this. So although there is mention and there was some discussion during the design of the roadmap about these topics, that perhaps they're not very prominent, and certainly much less so than in the IASH 23 Unsolved Problems paper, and those are specifically water quality, health, and also the relationship between hydrology and the social sciences. So those are perhaps areas that we should keep bearing in mind in terms of the evolution of the roadmap. So what progress has there been then over the 2 years since it was published? Well, there are lots of things have been happening that are relevant to the roadmap. I think I want to here highlight three key mechanisms for its delivery that have are now really quite well established, I think. So one is the FIP program, and then I want to say something about the establishment of the collaboration structures, the governance and advisory boards that have been mandated by the existence of the roadmap and are now up and running. And in particular, to say something about the Scientific and Technical Advisory Group, or STAG, and its working groups. So I'll start by saying a few words about FIP. FIP is an Environment Agency programme. £7 million, if memory serves me right, over 6 years, which I suppose was enabled in some ways, certainly helped into existence by the work done in developing the roadmap. And the reason for highlighting FIP here is that it's the largest single sort of substantial program of funded delivery to date that overlaps closely with the flood hydrology roadmap. So for those who don't know, The programme is very accessible through an Environment Agency website. The address is there, but it's easy to find through a search engine. And that website's great because it lists both, it gives both an overview of the programme and it also lists individual projects and the resources that go with them. There is an update on the programme that was uploaded, I think possibly yesterday, quite recently, that's dated this month, so March 2024 update, that shows now 20 projects being listed, 6 of which are completed, 5 of which have a complete first phase, and there are major reports due to be published this summer on uncertainty in hydrometric data and open methods in hydrology. So I'm not going to attempt to speak on behalf of the FIP programme or to provide a sort of detailed overview of it here. I've just picked out a few individual projects, and apologies for missing some out as well, inevitably. But just to give a taste of the kind of work that's been done and some of the the really great outputs that have been delivered. So I'll start by mentioning the UK Hydrology Skills Survey. It was led by Chris Skinner, which is now published. I guess many people on this call may have seen this already and may well have been involved in responding to it. So this is a fantastic resource that gives us a great snapshot of the present day situation in terms of our profession and the communities of practice and research that relate to hydrology. Chris did a little bit of further analysis. I'm not sure if it's published in the results, but he showed this to the Roadmap advisory group a few months ago that suggests that the constituent, the population communities that were engaged in the skills survey very much overlap and align with those who were engaged in co-creation of the roadmap. So the two, as I suppose, community consultation exercises are very compatible. Although, of course, the skills survey also did, it didn't focus exclusively on flooding. So that's certainly one highlight so far. Another highlight within the data theme is the Hydrology Data Explorer, and I'm sure many of, perhaps everyone on this call may have already used this, and that it's made available sub-daily flow level, rainfall and groundwater information on a website and via an API. So another fantastic resource. A great project that has been is being delivered through FIP is this work that Sarah Alexander's been leading on data rescue, trying to make sure that we don't lose and that we gain the full value from the more than 10,000 station years worth of data that still exists in pre-digital archive form in the UK. So that's a huge resource. So there's some great information on the FIP website about that project, including 2 workshops held last year that drew in something like nearly 900 person years worth of hydrological experience from about 60 participants. And some really interesting stuff on active trials of AI-enabled techniques for data processing, which perhaps suggests that it's a little bit too soon to imagine that we can just throw all this stuff as an AI system and hope it will sort it all out for us. So lots of work still to be done there. And finally, I wanted to highlight the work on open methods that's been ongoing and is one of those projects that I think is due to publish during the course of this year. The work has really been asking. Well, this is something that was produced, I think, by the team of artists who joined the project. What happens if we open things up? And this project's really interesting in that it's taking, I think, a very broad and quite comprehensive view of what open methods would mean in hydrology, both in science and in practice, what the issues are surrounding the adoption of openness, and what does that even mean? What does open mean from different perspectives? So some really great work, and I think it's a real achievement for our profession that the development of the roadmap and the way that's helped to develop the FIT program has given us the space, the time, and the resources to dig into some of these sorts of topics, both from a research and a practitioner perspective, and do some really serious work on them. So to mix metaphors slightly, I sometimes think of the roadmap action wheels as being like pizzas, and FIP has been taking some pretty good bites out of the slices of most of those, well, 3 out of 4 of those pizzas. But FIP is not the roadmap. It's not, those they are different things. FIP is contributing to the roadmap, but you only have to look at the scope, the timescales, and the budgets involved to realise that it's not the whole story. So there's much more work needed, and of course you would expect that over a program that has a 25-year vision. And in particular, FIP has by design been addressing the 3 themes on data, ways of working, and methods, but not the scientific understanding theme. That doesn't mean that it's unscientific in any way, the FIT program, very important not to think of it that way. It contains lots of relevant and scientifically informed analysis, but it's just not a program that has been driven explicitly by the roadmap scientific understanding theme. And I'll come back to this point in a minute. One of the other sort of major areas of progress over the last 2 years then has been the establishment of what I'll call the governance structures for the roadmap, because that's the language used within the roadmap. Although I think governance maybe is perhaps a little bit too narrow a way of thinking of this. But in particular, within the ways of working theme, with the support of the regulators in particular, we now have a governance board that's well established and a scientific and technical advisory group, or STAG. So the governance board has representation from across the UK regulators, plus UK Research and Innovation and the BHS. There's a memorandum of understanding that's been signed between the parties, between the regulators, that really cements, the commitment to the roadmap, and has enabled and is enabling resources to be allocated towards delivering it, which is no mean feat in the current economic climate. So that is really great. And of course, that governance board it's a structure now. It's an established group that can help us as a community, I hope, to seek the funding and the resources that we need to push the roadmap forward in the coming years. In the same way, the Science and Technical Advisory Group, the STAG, is also now up and running. This was established, had its first meeting in January last year, following an open recruitment process in 2022. And it's providing a forum for debate and discussion about research gaps and priorities and how those may align with the roadmap, and has within its remit a role to offer advice to the governance board. There are 15 individuals who were appointed to the STAG. So we have the usual sort of wall of logos here. The names are on this slide, and all this is on the BHS website and the Flood Hydrology Roadmap page. So I'm not going to read everyone's names out, but the point here is that there are a mix of individuals from across different sectors, balancing hopefully between regulators, NGOs, the academic, university research sector, research institutes, and the private sector. So the STAG has had 6 meetings now. Those have been facilitated with the support of secretariat function from the Environment Agency. In practice, for most of its existence, that means Carl Townley, who wasn't named as a member on the previous list, but I want to just acknowledge Carl's great contribution to the STAG. And that funding for a secretariat function by the governance board and by the Environment Agency has been really, really important. On average, there have been 12 attendees, 12 group members per meeting. That's fluctuated a little over the different meetings. And that represents at least 160 hours of unfunded input, and unfunded in the sense that nobody on the STAG is contracted to attend those meetings. So this is community input, which is brilliant to see. I say at least 160 hours because that calculation is based on time to join the meetings, but there has been quite a bit of work going on in addition to the meetings, which I'll touch on in a minute. We did a little bit of sort of self-reflection recently within the STAG through a survey of the membership, just to see how effective we thought we were being. And there is one question that really stood out in that survey, which was this one about visibility. And the overwhelming sense from the members of the STAG itself is that the group is probably not sufficiently visible to the wider profession and the outside world. So in an attempt perhaps just to start to make inroads into that issue, and there's only so much I can do here, but just to make a start, I wanted to say a little bit about what we've been doing within the STAG. So over its 2 years, it takes quite a bit of time to establish new groups and to get them working, to find ways of working, to understand the terms of reference, and for people to sort of get to know each other. And I think we are getting there. Probably have got to that point with the STAG. The chair of the STAG, which is a rotating position, has been attending meetings of the Roadmap Governance Board. So there's a communication route there, and members of the Governance Board have also joined STAG meetings. So there's two-way communication between the groups, and a shared collaboration, digital collaboration space that's been established for us. We've also already started to think about future recruitment and sort of rotation of the membership to allow for gradual turnover and evolution of the group. So Peter Reid from ROTS has kicked that process off. There have been a number of working groups within the STAG that have done work in addition to that 160 hours that I mentioned. So John Lloyd from Arcadis has led a subgroup that has been working on establishing a mechanism for collecting a research catalogue for UK flood hydrology as part of the ways of working, action and coordination. So I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. And Tracy Haxton from WHS has been taking the lead on a working group that is currently drafting a briefing for the Roadmap Governance Board on how it might approach the actions relating to standards and quality standards in flood hydrology. So, as I say, it's unfunded, and there's real work being going on through those subgroups. And I think overall, it's probably fair to say that all members of the group have been contributing to meetings. Most members have been able to contribute to one or more of these sort of subgroup activities along the way. So there's really grateful to colleagues within the groups for all that input. I mentioned the research catalogue. Before I move on, I'll just a reminder that within the methods theme, the stack has also provided some briefing on the developments of benchmarking approaches to the governance board. So turning back to the research catalogue, I said that was stimulated by the action on coordination within the roadmap. It also touches on the synthesis action within the scientific understanding theme. There is a survey form that is live. It's been live actually since about the time of the BHS 40th anniversary meeting in London, where we had what you might think of as a soft launch for the catalogue. So this is a fairly simple survey form. We're going to keep promoting this at meetings over the coming year or so. It will be live. I think currently the commitment is to keep it live until March next year. Certainly, it's not going away anytime soon, so there's plenty of time to engage with the survey. What the STAG is really trying to do here is to allow for a what you might describe as a bottom-up approach to coordinating the research and innovation activities around flood hydrology. So that coordination process from the top down, there are big picture initiatives like FIP, I've already mentioned, like the Flood and Drought Research Initiative, that naturally arise on the agendas of coordination meetings and people in the various groups that I've mentioned are involved in those initiatives and communicating about them. But as a STAG, we were also really interested to try to capture some of the more granular intelligence about research that's going on that's relevant to flood hydrology, and particularly that could be relevant to innovations and improvements in applied hydrology. So, that could be a research grant, it could be a journal paper, it might even be one paragraph, one graph, one set of results within a paper. It might be a PhD thesis or a chapter in a PhD thesis. And filling this form in and getting that kind of information into the catalogue, we hope will enable those in that work to ultimately achieve greater visibility and to be brought together and collated and to help shape further proposals and further initiatives that are directed or enabled through the roadmap groups. So please do have a look at this and engage with this effort if you can. So what's next? We're 2 years in, and clearly there's a lot being done, and there's also a long way to go. So I mean, at this stage, I guess what I want to say is that just a reminder really that the roadmap is not a project in itself. It's a costed plan based on this very extensive co-design process that I outlined earlier. But it's costed and not funded. As we've seen, there are some initiatives that already exist that are helping to deliver on it and that are funded, of course. But the roadmap itself is not, it's not it is a community-owned initiative. So no single organisation or individual has decision-making power to allocate the resources to deliver the whole of the roadmap. It's just not set up that way. It's a plan, and it's a plan that reflects a very wide coalition of interests. So hopefully something that we can all get together and rally around and use collectively to our advantage to secure resources for future developments. All four of the wheels lead up to the vision for delivering, effectively long-term investments and resources for flood hydrology and allied disciplines. And as you've hopefully already seen just from the snapshots of individual projects I mentioned, there is work already underway that is touching on many of the actions, particularly across those three wheels that are covered by the FIP programme, and those actions are part of that pathway to longer term investments in flood hydrology. In particular, the NERC investment in the Floods and Droughts Research Infrastructure Initiative is a real head start from a roadmap perspective in terms of the data theme, and not exclusively the data theme. There's also elements of FDRI that will relate to the other themes in the roadmap. And FIP has touched on the other three themes, of course. I think the theme that perhaps has still the least clarity, or is perhaps less sort of mapped out in specific terms, is that of scientific understanding, which is why it's shaded. More of the slices of the pizza are shaded in on this diagram. And so for me, a really important question now is how can we best use the roadmap to work together and to secure investment, broadly speaking, whether that's time, resources, money, interest, engagement, but in investments in general terms in flood hydrology research that improves our scientific basis, and that also sits on that pathway towards innovation and development of the profession of hydrology as a whole. And my hope is that the roadmap actions give a sense of how that question might be answered, how we might structure an answer to the question at least. And so moving on to next steps, clearly there are some important meetings planned. Kirsty already mentioned the Royal Society meeting in June. There is then a session planned at the BHS symposium in September, specifically about the roadmap or some combination of the roadmap and the FIP. That is in hand at the moment, so unfortunately, it's a little bit too early to announce any details about that. But there is something being planned at the moment, and so we should, I think, at the BHS symposium have an opportunity to get together again as a community and have some discussion and debate about how we answer that question, perhaps that I just posed about using the roadmap to help further our science and our profession. In the meantime, I'll leave you here also with a link and a QR code to the research catalogue in case anyone is inspired by this to go there and start adding your contributions. And if I may, it's not directly roadmap related, but obviously there are connections. So I just want to give a quick advertisement to my colleague Sam Watkiss, who's an early career consultant and researcher, giving a talk on Thursday through it's a joint BHS and Young Hydrologic Society talk on wars of water in Pennine and Scottish catchments. So dial into that if you can. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Very interesting and informative talk, and an action for us all to contribute to the flood hydrology research catalogue and engage with the initiatives you were mentioning. So we have some time now for a question and answer session. I'll hand over to Will, who's going to chair this, but if you would like to either raise your hand or type a question into the chat, then we will answer any queries.
We don't have any questions at the moment, but I have a question. This may be a bit of a broad question, so apologies if it is. But what is the intention from the roadmap's perspective for how the roadmap is to benefit people or groups going for funding within the area of flood risk? Is it a sort of a way of linking back to a consensus of existing research gap and research needs? Is that the intention?
I think that's part of it. Yeah, well, and it's it is a community co-designed initiative, and it has that's evidence, and it I think it's legitimate to make that statement. So, and that community, of course, involves practicing. I mean, I don't really like the kind of hard distinction between researcher and practitioner, because in a discipline like hydrology, there are very many people who sort of sit across the two camps, but there is a strong, I suppose, practitioner and innovation driver behind the roadmap, as well as the input from the research perspective. So it does identify, broadly speaking, needs and a vision from both the research and practice community. So to my mind, and I've often said in talks like this, it can be used, I think, as a way of outlining pathways to impact for researchers. If I was writing a grant that was related to flood hydrology, I think it's a brilliant resource to be able to begin articulating the pathway to impact, to show that there is the demand and the importance placed on that research. And within those appendices, and within some of the main parts of the roadmap, the main roadmap report, although there are not cost benefit calculations, there are clear, there is a clear articulation of the benefits, in terms of practical impact of some of the research pathways.
Brilliant. No, thank you. That's really useful. Thanks. So we do have a question from Claire Waller that's just come in. What are your aspirations to have achieved this by the time? Sorry, let me. What are your aspirations to have achieved this by this time next year? It's also written.
What are the aspirations to achieve by this time next year?
No, I did that. Yeah.
I mean, yes, I'm not quite sure how to answer that, in the sense that I suppose I'm speaking as a co-author of the roadmap, and I was chairing the STAG for part of its first 2 years. Nick Reynard is now the chair, and that's going to pass to Louise Slater in the next rotation after Nick. So from that perspective, I would say I would very much like to see that scientific understanding wheel being, having more detail put onto it, being mapped out in more detail, with more specifics, and the connections between some of those science areas and ideas, and the sort of innovation pathways that, broadly speaking, are facilitated through the other three themes. So I think the time is right this year for us to take a closer look at the science understanding theme, not to the exclusion of the other themes at all, but I do think it's the one where we're now in a position where it could benefit from that concerted effort. And there are some meetings, there are some forums for exchange of views and discussion that should hopefully enable that. So that would certainly be one aspiration. And if that can be on a footing where, well, both through the development of the science theme and also the work of the STAG and the governance board, we can be starting to identifying how we're going to secure the longer term, the future investments, that those 4 wheels all point towards, then that would be in a really good position. Andy Wall, I just noted, who's currently chairing the governance board, just unmuted there. Andy, was that a cue to add something to my response?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. No, I'd echo that. I think it's spot on. I think one of the things we will need to do, working with the stag, I think, is identify. Now we've got the governance in place, we've got the stag in place, we've got a number of actions being taken forward. I think there is a priority to look at that some of those longer term actions and identify what the delivery mechanisms are, particularly those that depend on research. And clearly a lot's happened since the roadmap was produced. So, for example, you mentioned FDRI, that's in place. What could that mean for it? So I think there is a collective need for us to work out how we might take those forward and where the funding will come from, because clearly nothing happens without money. So I think we recognise, Rob, to be fair, you've had discussions at Stag around that, and I think we're recognising also the Stag is an advisory board. It's not a delivery board, so it can't be expected to lead all of these actions. But Claire, in response to your question, I think it's a key priority for us over the next 12 months to look at how we can leverage funding and which become those priority actions and keep that under review, because it is a 25-year-old roadmap. It's relevant, but I think it's right every 2 to 3 years we take a stock check of the priorities across the community. If that helps, Rob.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob and Andy. Thanks, Claire, for the question. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or type it into the box. I don't think anyone is raising their hands. Nope, we're looking good. Okay. Well, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to have a chat in the comments under the social media posts, or get in touch with presumably Rob. Are you happy for people to get in touch with questions, or is there a point of contact for the roadmap updates?
Well, I suppose roadmap as a whole, I think my answer to that would be, certainly as far as the stag goes, as members of it, our names are all published as members. So really any of us, should be sort of able to receive queries about the roadmap. I'm certainly happy to, and feed those into the group.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, with that, Kirsty, I guess I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you very much, Rob, for a brilliant talk, and for everybody else for their contributions. Yeah, and we'll leave it there. Hope everyone has a good afternoon, and yeah, hope to see you at the next talk and the upcoming conferences as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks all.